Christmas night. A thin veil of snow drifted over the battlefield, glowing crimson under illumination flares. A SEAL admiral stepped into the forward command bunker and glanced toward the woman standing perfectly still in the corner. "Your call sign?" he asked with a half-smile. "Nova." No response followed. She didn't explain. She didn't defend it. Outside, a SEAL unit was trapped between two dominant high points. Radio chatter dissolved into static, no support was inbound, and there was no viable exit. Then Nova set up her rifle, and within minutes the enemy command network went completely silent. By 2100 hours, the temperature had fallen to 18 degrees F. Captain Ryan Holt pressed his gloved hand against the frozen concrete wall of the Tactical Operations Center, feeling the cold bleed through the insulation. Through the reinforced window, he could make out the distant ridgeline where 3rd Platoon had been holding ground for 11 straight hours. Time was slipping. "Casualty report," Holt said without turning. Lieutenant Evan Brooks checked his tablet. 2 KIA, 5 wounded. Medevac can't reach them. Terrain's too exposed, and we've confirmed enemy anti-air on both sides of the valley. Artillery grids are too close to friendly positions. A fire mission would throw shrapnel inside their perimeter. Holt let out a slow breath, white vapor hanging in the bunker air. Someone had tried to bring in a space heater earlier, but the generator had been reserved for comms. Christmas in a war zone meant nothing changed, except the snow fell harder and the irony cut deeper. The door scraped open with metal on concrete. Admiral Richard Kane entered, 2 aides at his side. He was 58, silver-haired, carrying the kind of authority that made junior officers straighten instinctively. He'd commanded special operations units on 3 continents, earned 2 Navy crosses, and built a reputation for making brutal calls under impossible conditions. He was also known for zero tolerance of inefficiency. "Status," Kane said, pulling off his gloves. Holt turned. "3rd Platoon is pinned on Hill 347. Heavy contact since 1600. They've beaten back 2 assaults, but ammo is critical. Maybe 2 hours of sustained fire left." Quinn's team on the north approach stalled. Enemy mortars set on the reverse slope. Every movement gets bracketed. Kane studied the tactical map projected on the wall. Blue icons marked friendly forces. Red clusters estimated enemy positions. The blue symbols on Hill 347 were swallowed by red drone coverage. "Signal lost 40 minutes ago," Holt added. "Either jammed or shot down." Kane's jaw tightened. He'd flown in personally to oversee what was supposed to be a routine valley clearance. Instead, it had become a siege. That was when he noticed her. She stood at the far edge of the bunker, separated from the knot of officers and analysts. Her uniform was worn but immaculate. Brown hair pulled into a tight regulation bun. A tablet rested in one hand, unused. Her eyes were on the map, not studying it, reading it. Kane had seen hundreds of soldiers over his career and could usually sort them instantly. The eager, the capable, the rare few who owned chaos. This woman fit none of those categories. She simply occupied the space, quiet and unmoving, like something everyone had unconsciously learned to work around. Kane nodded toward her. "Who's that?" Holt followed his gaze. "Warrant Officer Maya Cross, sir. Attached from Special Activities." "Her role?" "Precision marksman. Special reconnaissance." Kane raised an eyebrow. Special Activities didn't send people forward without reason. If she was here, someone high up expected her to matter. Still, he'd been in this fight long enough to know assets were sometimes assigned for politics, optics, or career boxes. He didn't object to any of that in principle. But on Christmas night, with Americans bleeding on a frozen hill, he needed operators, not placeholders. He walked toward her. Warrant Officer Cross. She turned her head, blue eyes steady, unreadable. Sir? What's your call sign? A half-second pause followed, the kind that could mean she was choosing her words, or nothing at all. Nova, sir. Kane's expression shifted. Not quite a smile, not quite a smirk, something suspended between the two. Nova, he repeated slowly, as if weighing it. Around the bunker, several staff officers lifted their eyes from their consoles. The air in the room tightened, subtle but noticeable. Lieutenant Brennan focused very deliberately on his tablet. Kane said nothing more. He didn't need to. The tone carried the message. It was the verbal equivalent of a dismissive pat on the head, acknowledgement without respect, recognition without weight. Nova. It sounded young. Warrant Officer Maya Cross didn't react. Her face stayed neutral. She didn't defend the call sign, didn't explain it, didn't offer context. She gave the smallest nod and returned her attention to the map. Kane turned back toward the command table, already pushing her from his thoughts. All right, he said. Let's talk extraction options. The briefing dragged on another 20 minutes. Kane pressed Holt on logistics, challenged Brennan on intelligence updates, and walked through 3 separate courses of action, each worse than the last. Option 1. Push reinforcements through the valley under darkness, accepting high casualty risk. Option 2. Wait for morning air support, knowing 3rd Platoon might not hold that long. Option 3. Order an immediate fighting withdrawal, abandon equipment, and concede the high ground they'd bled for all day. None of them were good. Kane paced slowly, hands clasped behind his back. His aide waited near the door. Holt looked drained. Brennan kept refreshing casualty feeds, his jaw tightening each time. Across the room, Maya Cross remained in her corner. One of Kane's aides, a young lieutenant commander named Peter Stokes, leaned in and muttered something under his breath. Kane caught the last words. Sounds like something out of a kid's book. Kane's mouth twitched. He didn't quite laugh, but there was a shared understanding between him and Stokes. Yes, it sounded ridiculous. Yes, they were all thinking it. Holt noticed. He'd worked with Maya Cross for 6 weeks. He didn't know her background. Special activities never shared details, but he knew her performance. She'd provided overwatch on 2 patrol operations, and both times her intelligence had been flawless. Still, he understood how this worked. If an admiral found something amusing, everyone else quietly agreed. Maya showed no sign she'd heard anything. Her stance was balanced, tablet loose in one hand, breathing even. Her eyes tracked the map, following terrain lines, calculating distance and movement. Holt cleared his throat. Sir, if I may, Warrant Officer Cross has experience operating in low-visibility environments. If we're considering reconnaissance before committing forces, she could give us updated enemy positions. Kane looked at him. You're suggesting we send a single operator into a contested valley on Christmas night to visually confirm positions we already mapped by drone? The drone data is 40 minutes old, sir. Conditions change, Kane repeated flatly. And you think Nova here can give us intelligence that materially changes our decision before 3rd Platoon runs out of ammo? Holt hesitated. Framed that way, it sounded foolish. I think she can give us options we haven't considered. Kane studied him, then turned to Maya. Warrant Officer, Captain Holt seems confident in your abilities. Do you have any observations about our current situation? It was a test, and everyone knew it. Silence would confirm she was ornamental. Generic insight would make her sound green. Bold analysis would be overreach. Maya met his eyes. Third platoon isn't pinned by force concentration, sir. They're pinned by communications. Kane's eyebrow lifted. Explain. Enemy has at least 2 forward observers coordinating mortar fire. They're not trying to overrun the hill. They're fixing our position while maneuvering a larger element to cut off retreat routes. Mortars are harassment. Encirclement is the objective. We already know that, Kane said. Yes, sir. But the observers are the hinge point. They're feeding coordinates to a command node within roughly 2 kilometers. Remove the node, the observers go quiet. Mortars lose coordination. Third platoon can maneuver. You're proposing a decapitation strike on a headquarters we haven't located. I'm proposing a target I can locate, sir. The bunker fell silent. Kane stared at her. You're saying you can identify and neutralize an enemy command post at night in under 2 hours? Yes, sir. Based on what? Pattern analysis, fire mission timing, communication discipline. They're competent, but predictable. Stokes made a small sound, half cough, half laugh. Kane never broke eye contact. That's a significant claim. It's an assessment, sir. And if you're wrong, then third platoon stays where they are now. Nothing lost except me. Kane turned back to the map. 15 seconds passed as he calculated risk against necessity. Finally, he looked at Holt. Her record? Classified, sir. Convenient. Holt didn't blink. I've worked with her. She delivers. Kane exhaled slowly. And if I ignore this and order a conventional extraction? We execute, sir, but we take casualties. Another silence. Outside, a flare burst over the valley, red light washing through the bunker window. Kane made his call. All right, he said quietly. Nova, you've got 2 hours? Find me that command node? Maya Cross exited the bunker without ceremony. She didn't salute, didn't acknowledge the Admiral's conditional approval. She simply lifted her rifle case from beside the door and stepped out into the falling snow. Captain Holt watched her leave, then turned back to the map. Lieutenant Brennan moved closer, lowering his voice. Sir, do you really think she can pull this off? I think, Holt said carefully, that if anyone can, it's her. Brennan frowned. I've never even heard of Nova before this rotation. You wouldn't have. Across the room, Admiral Kane was speaking quietly with his aides. Stokes was muttering about contingency planning, about not delaying reinforcements just because one sniper thought she could fix the problem. Kane nodded along, but his attention kept drifting back to the door Maya had gone through. Holt noticed. Sir, he said, stepping closer. Permission to speak candidly? Kane glanced at him. Go ahead, Captain. Warrant Officer Cross isn't a standard asset. I don't know the full details of her record. Special Activities keeps it sealed, but I've heard things. From who? Kane asked. People who don't usually talk. Kane folded his arms. I'm listening. Holt hesitated, choosing his words. 3 years ago, Balkans. Hostage rescue. High-value target held in a compound with more than 30 enemy fighters. A standard assault would have gotten the hostage killed before entry. So someone went in alone the night before and dismantled the command structure without alerting the perimeter. When the assault force hit the building, there was no coordinated resistance. The hostage walked out. Kane looked at him. And you're saying that was Cross? I'm saying the report listed mission success due to an unexplained internal command failure. No attribution. No details. Kane considered that. Circumstantial. Yes, sir. So is North Africa 2 years ago. Enemy battalion dug into a mountain pass, blocked supply routes for 3 weeks. Intelligence said it would take a brigade to clear them. Then overnight, the battalion withdrew. No contact, no engagement. Could have been their choice. Their commander and his entire staff were found dead in their bunker. Single shots. No alarms. Kane's posture shifted slightly. You're telling me Warrant Officer Cross is some kind of ghost who dismantles enemy commands by herself? I'm telling you, her call sign isn't a joke, sir. People who know don't talk because Special Activities doesn't want attention. Stokes scoffed from nearby. That sounds like mythology, Captain. Holt turned to him. Maybe. But I was at the Balkans debrief. I saw the footage. Footage of what? Empty shell casings laid out in a line outside the commander's quarters, deliberate like a signature. Stokes frowned. That proves nothing. They were from a Macmillan TAC 338, Holt said. Same rifle Cross carries. Silence settled over the group. Kane stared at the map, thinking. If even part of this was true, Maya Cross wasn't just competent. She was something else. He thought back to when he'd asked her call sign, Nova. He'd dismissed it as juvenile. Now, with snow falling outside and Americans bleeding on a hilltop, he wondered if he'd misjudged her badly. How long has she been out? Kane asked. Brennan checked his watch. 12 minutes since she left. Sir, no radio contact. She doesn't use standard channels. Separate encryption. We won't hear from her unless she initiates. Kane nodded slowly. Then we wait. 30 minutes passed. Then 45. At the 1-hour mark, 3rd Platoon reported 30% ammunition remaining. Mortar fire had increased. 2 more wounded. Holt stood by the radio listening to updates from the hill. Lieutenant Felix Carrion sounded calm but strained. He was doing everything right. Conserving ammo, rotating positions, holding discipline. But discipline had limits. We're not going to last another hour at this tempo, Carrion said. Request immediate extraction or reinforcement. Holt looked at Kane. Kane's jaw tightened. He'd given Maya Cross 2 hours, but the situation was collapsing faster than expected. Waiting too long meant extracting under worse conditions. Stokes leaned in. Sir, we need to decide. Quinn's team can push with armored support. It'll be costly, but doable. Estimated casualties 10 to 15%. 3rd Platoon survives. Kane stared at the map. 10 to 15% meant more dead, more wounded. Acceptable on paper, not acceptable in reality. Captain Holt, Kane said. Any word from Nova? No, sir. Can we reach her? Not without risking her position. Kane exhaled slowly. This was the part of command he hated, choosing with incomplete information, knowing lives depended on decisions made in a concrete bunker miles away. He pictured Maya Cross alone in the valley. If she was real, if the stories were even half true, then she was doing something right now no one else could. Prep Quinn's team, Kane said at last. Full combat load. They move in 30 minutes if we don't get new intelligence. Yes, sir. Brennan relayed the orders. The bunker came alive with motion. Radios crackled. Logistics spun up. Holt stood by the window staring into the dark valley. Come on, he thought. Prove it. At the 90-minute mark, the radio crackled. Not the standard frequency, a different channel. Encrypted. Brennan snapped his head up. Sir, I'm receiving a transmission on the Special Activities band? Kane moved to the comm station. Patch it through. A brief burst of static, then a voice came through, calm and precise. Command Nova. 3 targets confirmed. Transmitting coordinates. Brennan's fingers flew over his tablet, as he input the grid data Maya sent. On the main display, 3 new red markers appeared. Holt leaned in. They formed a rough triangle 2 kilometers northwest of Hill 347, farther back than intelligence had projected, positioned to use terrain masking against drones. "Nova," Kane said into the mic. "Confirmed target identification. Confirmed by radio intercepts and visual. 2 forward observers here and here." She tagged the points. "Primary command post here. 8 personnel, including battalion commander. Active comms with mortar teams. You have eyes on all 3? "Affirmative." Kane glanced at Holt, then back to the map. "That's a dispersed target set. A single operator can't hit simultaneously." "Correct. Sequential engagement. Observers first, command post last. Execution time 15 minutes. Stokes stepped forward. "Sir, this deviates significantly from doctrine. 1 operator engaging 3 positions in a contested valley is high risk." "Your recommendation?" Kane asked. "Hold. Let Quinn's team move. Use Nova's intel for a coordinated assault." It was reasonable. Textbook. Kane looked at the red icons, then at the blue marker on Hill 347, surrounded and bleeding time. "Nova," he said. "If you engage, what's the effect on 3rd Platoon?" "Mortar fire stops within 5 minutes. Enemy infantry loses coordination. Window opens for extraction or reinforcement." "And if you miss?" A pause, barely perceptible. "I don't miss, sir." There was no bravado in it, just fact. Kane made the call. "Execute. 3rd Platoon, stand by. Quinn, hold." Holt felt tension release from his chest. He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath. Over the radio, Maya's voice came once more. "Understood. Nova out." Then silence. The bunker waited. Maya Cross lay prone along a ridgeline, rifle settled into a compact bipod. Snow dusted her ghillie suit, erasing her outline. Through her scope, the valley resolved into layered thermal and low-light imagery. 800 meters out, the first forward observer crouched in a shallow trench, radio pressed to his ear. Maya controlled her breathing, slow and even. She read the wind through falling snow, adjusted for temperature, compensated for the slight incline. The observer shifted, turning his head. She pressed the trigger. The suppressed rifle gave a muted cough. Recoil was absorbed, familiar. In the scope, the observer folded forward. No alarm. No immediate reaction. In the dark and constant mortar noise, one body dropping meant nothing yet. By the time awareness set in, Maya was already moving to her second sightline. The next observer was standing, scanning with binoculars. A harder shot. She waited. 3 seconds. 4. He paused over his map. She fired. This time there were shouts. Flashlights flared, sweeping the wrong direction. Maya had already displaced, moving 30 meters along the ridgeline into cover behind broken rock. Through her scope, confusion rippled through the enemy positions. Radios would be lighting up, unanswered. Now the hard part. The command post sat 850 meters out, tucked into a natural depression shielded from aerial view. Thermal signatures glowed. 8 bodies, exactly as reported. One stood outside, speaking urgently into a radio. Battalion commander. Maya adjusted for distance and the crosswind that had picked up. The commander turned, gesturing toward the depression. She fired. He dropped. Chaos followed. Men spilled out, weapons raised, firing blind into the dark. Tracers arced uselessly across the valley. Maya didn't move. She waited for panic to crest, for order to try to reassert itself. Then she fired again and again. Each shot was measured. No waste. 90 seconds later, the command post was silent. Maya scanned once more, No movement, no standing heat signatures. She keyed her radio. Command Nova, all targets neutralized. Below Hill 347, the enemy mortar teams waited for coordinates that never came. The team leader keyed his radio. Static. He tried again. Nothing. Where's fire control? Someone asked. I don't know. Switch to alternate frequency. They switched. Still dead air. The team leader stood, staring toward where the command post should have been. No lights, no chatter. Just darkness and falling snow. Something's wrong, he muttered. On Hill 347, Lieutenant Carrion caught it first. They've stopped, he said over comms. Mortar fires ceased. Captain Holt's voice came back instantly. Confirm, 3rd Platoon. Affirmative. Last impact was 2 minutes ago. Nothing since. In the bunker, Holt looked to Admiral Kane. Kane stood motionless, eyes locked on the map. Maya's voice cut in over the encrypted channel. Command, enemy forces withdrawing from forward positions. Infantry pulling back without coordination. Estimate 15-minute extraction window. Brennan brought up delayed thermal satellite imagery. Grainy, imperfect, but it matched her report. The red clusters were breaking apart, drifting away from Hill 347 in scattered elements. They don't know what hit them, Holt said quietly. Kane lifted the handset. 3rd Platoon, you are clear for immediate extraction. Quinn's team will provide overwatch. Move now. Copy, Command. 3rd Platoon moving. The bunker surged into controlled motion. Staff coordinated exfil routes, updated casualty numbers, shifted support assets. Kane stood apart, watching the map. The red icons weren't disappearing because they'd been destroyed. They were retreating. An entrenched enemy battalion unraveling in disorder. 1 operator, 1 rifle, 15 minutes. Stokes approached carefully. Sir, that was remarkable. Kane didn't answer right away. He was thinking about the earlier moment, the half-smile, the unchallenged mockery. Nova. It hadn't been a joke. It had been a warning. Get me a direct line to Special Activities Command, Kane said. I want a full briefing on Warrant Officer Cross. Sir, that information is... I don't care about classification. Get it? Yes, sir. Holt stepped beside him. She'll be back within the hour. You can ask her yourself. Kane shook his head slowly. Captain, something tells me even if I ask, she won't tell me a damn thing. 3rd Platoon reached friendly lines without further casualties. Quinn's team reported no contact during exfil. The valley was abandoned. By Zorro 300 hours, the operation was secure. Kane stood in the bunker reading after-action summaries. Sparse. Enemy suffered catastrophic command failure. Withdrew under pressure. Friendly forces extracted. Nova wasn't mentioned. By design. Special activities never appeared in standard documentation. The mission would be classified, sanitized, buried. But Kane had watched it happen. An impossible problem resolved in minutes because one woman did what an entire battalion couldn't. The bunker door opened. Maya Cross stepped inside carrying her rifle case, snow dusting her shoulders. Her face was calm, unmarked by strain. The room fell quiet. She stowed her rifle, then turned to study the final force disposition on the map. Kane watched, then approached. Warrant Officer Cross, she turned. Sir, exceptional work tonight. Thank you, sir. I owe you an apology. Her expression didn't change. Earlier, when I asked about your call sign, I was dismissive. That was inappropriate. It's an unusual call sign, sir. I'm used to it. It's not unusual, Kane said quietly. It's earned. For the first time, something shifted in her expression. Not a smile, just acknowledgement. Yes, sir. Kane extended his hand. She shook it. "I don't know your full record," he said, "but I know you saved American lives tonight with a level of skill I've rarely seen in 30 years. I was doing my job, sir. You did far more than that." Holt approached with a cup of coffee and handed it to her. "Thought you might want this." She nodded. "Thanks, Captain." Around the bunker, staff whispered. The story was already spreading. How Nova had collapsed an enemy command structure alone. How 3rd Platoon walked out alive because of her. By morning, it would be legend. By next week, myth. In a month, most would question if it happened at all. But Kane would remember. He looked at Maya Cross, the quiet figure who'd stood in the corner while he made assumptions and let bias speak for him. "Nova," Kane said, using the call sign with intent. She met his gaze, respectful, steady. "If you're ever attached to one of my operations again, I'll know better than to question your capabilities." "Appreciate it, sir." Kane nodded and returned to the command table. Maya stayed near the equipment rack, sipping her coffee, eyes on the map. Business resumed. By 0600 hours, 3rd Platoon had been medevaced to the rear. The wounded were treated. The exhausted were fed and sent to sleep. The snowfall had stopped. Across the valley, the sun rose over empty enemy positions, lighting abandoned gear and half-dug trenches. Captain Holt stood outside the bunker, watching the sunrise, his breath fogging the cold air. Somewhere in the distance, helicopters moved supplies or rotated command staff. Christmas morning. He thought of his family back home, his wife, his 2 daughters. They'd be opening presents, drinking hot chocolate, laughing. He wished he could tell them what had happened. He couldn't. The operation was classified. The details would never surface. Maybe that was for the best. Some stories didn't need telling. Some heroes didn't need ceremonies. Maya Cross stepped out of the bunker with her rifle case and a small pack. She paused when she saw Holt. "Morning, Captain." "Morning." "Heading out. Transport's waiting. I'm already being reassigned." A faint smile crossed her face. "Special activities doesn't let people stay put." Holt nodded. He wanted to say more. "Thank you. Good luck." Anything that felt too small. Instead, he said, "It was an honor working with you." "Likewise." She turned toward the helipad. Holt called after her. "Hey, Nova." She stopped and looked back. "That thing you said in the bunker, about not missing. How long have you been doing this?" Maya considered it. "Long enough to know when it matters." She paused. "And last night mattered." Then she turned and walked away, fading into the morning light. Holt watched her go, then looked back across the valley. 3rd Platoon was safe. The mission was complete. Somewhere in a classified file, a report would state that enemy forces withdrew due to unforeseen command complications. No names, no context. Just another operation. 3 weeks later, Admiral Richard Kane sat in his headquarters office reviewing personnel files. He'd requested Maya Cross's full service record. It took 2 weeks and 3 clearance levels to access. Even then, most of it was redacted. What remained was impressive enough. Commendations across 4 continents, expert marksman ratings, fluency in 6 languages, advanced reconnaissance, and surveillance training. The omissions were more telling than the entries. Entire deployments listed with no details, operations referenced only by number, pages of blacked-out text. The most recent line read, "Warrant Officer Cross reassigned to special activities. Location classified. Duration indefinite." Kane closed the file as his aide, Lieutenant Commander Stokes, knocked and entered. Sir, you wanted to see me? I'm drafting recognition for the Christmas operation. I want to include Warrant Officer Cross. Stokes hesitated. Sir, special activities personnel don't usually receive public acknowledgement. I know, but her actions directly enabled the extraction of 3rd Platoon. They did, sir, but... Stokes paused. Off the record, Special Activities Command made it clear any formal commendation would be declined. Warrant Officer Cross requested no recognition. Kane leaned back. She did? Yes, sir. I get the sense people like her avoid attention. It interferes with what they do. Kane thought of the quiet figure in the bunker, standing apart, content to be overlooked until the moment she was needed. Some operators chased reputations. They wanted their names stamped into reports, their faces captured in photos, their stories repeated in briefing rooms. Others moved differently. They lived in the gaps of official records, between mission timestamps, in the quiet that followed the fighting. They didn't seek recognition because they'd already proven what mattered. All right, Kane said. No formal commendation, but I want a note placed in her personnel file. Sealed. Flag officers only. Stokes looked up. What should it say, sir? Kane considered for a moment, then spoke. Warrant Officer Maya Cross demonstrated exceptional courage and tactical expertise during operations on December 25th. Her actions directly prevented multiple casualties and ensured mission success. Any future commander should consider themselves fortunate to have her on their team. Stokes nodded, typing. I'll make sure it's filed properly, sir. Thank you, Lieutenant Commander. After Stokes left, Kane sat alone, reflecting on a career that spanned thousands of soldiers. He'd witnessed bravery, discipline, skill. He'd seen people rise under impossible pressure. But rarely someone like Maya Cross. An operator who didn't need validation, who did the work, saved lives, and vanished back into the shadows without asking for credit. The kind whose name would never reach history books, whose face would never be known, whose story would never be told publicly, yet whose impact would echo through every mission they touched and every life they preserved. Some names were meant to be spoken, others whispered, and some, like Nova, were meant to remain unspoken. That silence was their strength. That was their legend. Kane stood, walked to the window, and looked out over the headquarters compound. Soldiers moved between buildings, wrapped in the ordinary rhythm of military administration. Somewhere beyond it all, Maya Cross was already preparing for another assignment, another classified mission, another impossible problem, and when it ended, her name would appear nowhere in official reports. Just a sealed note in a restricted file. Just a memory carried by those she saved. Just another legend quietly passed between operators who knew. Admiral Richard Kane raised a salute to the glass. No one saw it. She would never know it happened. Because some warriors didn't need monuments. They just needed to know they mattered. And Nova had mattered more than anyone would ever record.